the recording. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Harlow. I am the CEO of the National Community Action Partnership, and we are so excited to have today's webinar. I know I just freaked Kettayun out with that excited piece. Many of you have met Kettayun Darvish-Kajori, who has been a consultant with us probably now, 2 years maybe? She's part of the family. Kettayun has just been a fabulous resource to help us talk about, or think about how we talk about community action. And today's webinar is probably the #1 request I get when I'm in the field. Denise, A, why don't people know community action? And B, can you get us an elevator pitch? Can you give me something that I can just memorize and share with somebody really quickly? And we say, well, it doesn't quite work that way, but we will see what we can do to get you tools and resources on how to do an elevator speech. And I think that interest level in network is apparent. We had over 200 people register for today's webinar, so we know that this is of interest to all of you. So thank you for being on here today. And again, as Charity said, we are recording this, so if you missed something, you want to go back and listen to it again, you certainly have the ability to do that. Play the recording for your staff, play it for your board, whatever you're going to do. So we like to start off all of our presentations, let's go to the next slide, with the promise of community action, because everything that we do is grounded in the promise. We know that community action truly does change people's lives every day, and sometimes the challenge for us is to explain exactly how. We're not siloed individual service organizations. We're about changing the world, and you do it every day. You win the war on poverty every day. We have to figure out how we tell that story. So again, thank you for being with us. A few pieces that we're going to be referencing here. Let's go to the next slide, please. You will have seen, and you should have received in the mail, your very own, at least at the ED, has received a hard copy version of our impact report. I still have the flip chart page that Kettayun mocked up on the wall and said, Denise, we're going to create this. And so it almost looks like this.
It almost looks like that, but with better design.
Better design, prettier picture, and not the hand scribble of the United States. But I hope that you've seen this. It's available up on our website. We have all the little graphics and pictures, and we've seen some agencies and state associations really using this report. It includes infographics, and we're getting very close to, a one-page little summary document that you can hand out when you do your elevator speech, perhaps. And we're going to have, and in the report there are also success stories, but we also know many of you are using this report and putting in your own success stories, which is exactly what we want you to do. One other piece before I turn the ball over to Kettayun, I hope that you've been listening to our Community Action podcast. We have a 6-part series that is now fully recorded. I think the 6th part will be launched later this week or early next. We have touched on advocacy. We have touched on the impact report. We have touched on David Bradley's role in NCAF. We've talked about 2Gen, and we had Gail Christopher come on and talk about racial equity. We really tried to hit a lot of the high points of the mission, purpose, and values that we believe in, that we hope add oomph to your elevator speech. So Kettayun, again, thank you so much for being here today. I can't wait to hear it. I'm going to sit here and maybe poke her with questions at times. We do have the chat.
You don't have to poke me. You
I
can
don't?
write them down and say them. I just wanted to.
Poking is much fun. Anyway. Sorry, we've known each other now 2 years. It's very casual at times. You do have a chat window. As Charity said, we are in listen-only mode because we have such a large group, which is fantastic. So put your comments in the chat window, and we will pause periodically to take a look at them. We have staff behind the scenes who will say, wait a minute, we got a question. And at times, Kettayun may be asking you to say, hey, try this out. Ideally, we would unmute you and let you talk, but we're going to ask you maybe to put some stuff in the chat window so we can reflect back to the broader audience. So I hope you're engaged. I hope you're excited, and I can't wait to hear your elevator speeches when I see you next, because I'm sure I will see you soon. So Kettayun, we'll turn the ball over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Denise. Thank you for inviting me to do this. And I've been to a couple of the Management Training Institutes, so I'm hoping that among the folks that are listening in or watching today are some folks that have been in those trainings, and that this is just sort of adding to some of the work we've been doing together around messaging and communication. So again, my name is Kettayun. I am a communications consultant, and I spend a lot of my time thinking about how do we get clear and consistent and are able to amplify all of the good work that you all do and that so many do in the nonprofit space. So today we're going to talk about elevator speeches, which sometimes people call them elevator pitches, and sometimes people call them core organizational message. So just know that what we're going to be looking at today is a way of getting a really concise, consistent message around what you do and why it matters. Let's go to the next slide, Charity. So just to be really clear about the things that I'm hoping we can accomplish during this session. So there is a kind of elevator speech structure that most folks use, and so I'm going to just share with you what does that structure look like so that you have an outline that you can use as you're putting together that core organizational elevator speech. I'm going to review an example sort of from the community impact report that Denise was mentioning, so that you can see it kind of come to life. I'm going to ask you all to actually start to outline an elevator speech. So maybe you have one already for your organization and you're using this as an opportunity to kind of reshape it, or maybe you're starting from scratch. But what I'm hoping is I can encourage some of you to start putting that thinking down and then actually put it in the chat window, and we can kind of workshop it a little bit, even though it's a webinar. I'm going to go over a few tips and tricks about how do you deliver an elevator speech in a way that's engaging. And then number 5 is have fun. So whether you're a fun person or not, I'm going to encourage you to have fun. I wish I could juggle or do something like that, but what we're going to do is hopefully have fun. So I want to say jokes in the chat window. I'm taking all jokes. So just so you know, I know the staff is looking at me like, you're a little crazy. It's true. If you've been to one of my training sessions, you know I'm a little crazy. Okay, let's get started. Why do you need an elevator speech? Why do you need an elevator speech? Anybody want to put some things in the chat window? When you know, Denise mentions this is a highly asked for training, or folks are asking for elevator speeches. So I'm curious, when folks are asking for that, or when you decided to join this webinar, what is it that you are looking for in an elevator speech? Let's see if anybody has anything to say. I'm going to give you a little time.
I have one.
Oh, you have one.
So one of our attendees said a bite-sized way to describe all of the work that community action does.
I like that, bite-sized.
I have another
love
one.
That.
Create a common language and focus for everyone in our agency.
Great.
To be able to tell someone about our agency in less than a minute, ideally.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I have so far.
That's great. You guys are hitting on the, oh, okay. Yep, so I'm now able to see some of the chat window. You want a clear, concise way to introduce yourself and your work. You don't want to be a rambler. I love that, because I'm a little bit of a rambler. Have you noticed that I'm a rambler? I love tangents, even though I'm a communications person. Clear and concise, absolutely. Anything else?
Got another, to be able to find a way to connect with who you're talking to in a way that they understand.
Yes, connecting. That is entirely the point of an elevator speech. Okay, well, let's move to the next slide, and as you guys keep thinking about what is it that you want to try and get out of it, I think that's, for me, whenever I do any communications product or tool, the number one thing I always do is say, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? What is my goal from doing this? And I think that you all are really hitting on those goals. So I will just say that the number one reason people do elevator speeches is this notion of, like, being able to answer the question, what do you do? So what is it that you do? And in fact, when I've met with different community action agencies, that is one of the things that people say to me again and again, is that, like, we just aren't good at saying what we do. We say we do 12 different programs. We say that we, you know, serve this person or that person, but we're really bad at saying, what do we do, and then make them care. Why does it matter, right? So those are really two really important questions that an elevator speech should be able to allow you to do and do concisely. So, and a number of you mentioned that. So the message consistency, I loved that someone mentioned having common language, because one of the things about an organizational message speech, right, is it's something, if you're getting your staff and your board and your volunteers and everybody to have an understanding of what your organizational message is, you are going to solve a problem that a lot of organizations run into, which is that when you have like one program person going out, or your development director going out, meeting with a group that's particularly interested in like children's issues, or then you have somebody else going out and talking about the food bank, what happens is your community starts to believe that you are many different organizations because they're really only hearing about one piece of your work. It's sort of like that analogy about the blind men, or right, who walk into the room with the elephant.
The elephant,
and somebody touches the trunk, and somebody touches the tail, and somebody touches the, have you ever heard that analogy? Yes. So that's the same issue that we have when folks are going out and talking about the work that we do. So if you have a core organizational elevator speech that everyone practices and is trained on, you're going to start to solve, you can both tailor to your audience interests, but start to solve for the problem that everyone is going out there talking just about the part of the organization that they work on. Okay? And then finally, the folks that talked about connecting, right? Absolutely, an elevator speech is something that leaves the door open for a further engagement, whether that's a conversation, whether that is, you know, coming to an event that you all are holding, or getting invited in to talk to the, you know, committee staff, or whatever the thing is. That's what an elevator speech is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be an annual report on your organization. It's supposed to open the door to engagement. So hopefully that, it seems like that lines up exactly with what everyone was saying, right? Is that what you hear from folks?
Yes, the consistency piece I think really resonates, right? And we had an event where we tried that out, and getting people to talk about what their elevator speech was, and that gets really hard, but what we heard was you have to practice it.
Yes.
And I heard you say it's talking about practicing and training.
Yes.
Which means you actually have to talk it out loud with one another to practice it. And we get really uncomfortable with that sometimes.
Yes.
And it feels a little cheesy, probably, honestly, a little bit.
Yeah.
But I talk to myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
Because you got to figure out what you say.
Yeah.
And now with all our fun phones, we can record ourselves to hear what we sound like. You can do that in the privacy of your own office or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's so important.
Yeah, I hope no one's recording me when I'm talking. That's the only thing that, I mean, I know you guys are, but that's like a whole nother level of recording, right? Okay, great. So let's talk about the basic structure. And there is a kind of common structure to elevator speeches, to these sort of persuasive pitches that people put together. And it's a really simple outline. I wanted to share it with you all so that you can use that as you start to move forward. So let's move to the next slide. And basically there's 4 floors to the elevator speech. Right, exactly.
4 floors.
Thank you. That's my juggling that I was going to try and do.
Okay.
Basically, you have an opening. I'm going to go over each of these sections. But you have an opening, you state the need, you talk about a solution, and then you go to a call for action or connection. So let's go move forward to the next slide. So basically, an opening is all about grabbing attention. It's all about that, you know, why should someone listen to you, pay attention to you? A lot of times an opening can be, I mean, obviously you're introducing yourself if people don't know who you are, but an opening can be something that's very topical in the news. So I was thinking about how you all do asset building, right? And how we just had in the news with the government shutdown, how many folks were without a paycheck for 5 weeks, and this notion that, you know, most families cannot cover an unexpected $400 expense. So, you know, one great opening that could have been talked about at that time, right? Especially if you serve in any of the states, are you serving folks that have a lot of government employees that weren't getting their paychecks, whether it was the Coast Guard or whomever. I think that would have been a great opening to say, like, you know, with this government shutdown, I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, we have 10,000 government employees in our area, and I know that most of those families can't cover a $400 emergency expense. Like, it just brings it in front of someone so that they're, you know, you're really connecting with them with something that's not just, I am so-and-so and this is what I do. It could be a big fact that people may not know. You know, it could be a story, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. But the opening is about grabbing attention, not making your case. So then the next area is the need, and I want to say the need is the problem at hand that sets the context for your work, right? So the need is about the context for your work. So that's your purpose. Why do you exist? So in our community, the following happens. You can use statistics, you can use stories. I will say, and we'll talk about this later, don't overwhelm people with statistics. You cannot hang on to in your brain through an auditory process more than a couple of facts. So you don't want to throw like a lot of statistics at people, but you want to set the need as your purpose, right? So then the next thing is the solution, and the solution is you, right? So if the need is the context for your work, the solution is you and what it is that you do. How are you solving that need? How are you solving that problem? Okay, what are you doing about it? And that's both a combination of kind of what you do and the impact of what you do, right? Okay, and then the final component of an elevator speech is the call to action. And I want to be really clear that this is an elevator speech. So, right, it's 2 minutes at top. So the call to action is not now write me a check for $100,000, right? I mean, I would love that. I have personally never charmed anyone to write me a check for $100,000 in 2 minutes. I have never charmed anyone in 2 minutes, period, right? So that's just not the way it works. So it is an action that's in direct relationship to the amount of time you spent with the person. So you're asking like, hey, can I leave you my impact report and follow up with you later? Can I would love to get you all, if you're a member of the state legislature, I would love to get you all to come in and see our programs. Can I follow up with one of your staff to talk about that some more? I would love to have a brown bag with your Kiwanis Club to talk about what we're doing. So, you know, a kind of an action that just keeps the door open, that keeps you moving on your kind of ladder of engagement that they talk about.
I mean, I don't have to change the world with my ask. It can be something as incremental as I would like to follow up with you.
Yes.
I would like to send you information about our organization. I'd like to send you our annual report.
Yes.
So an elevator speech isn't meant to change the world immediately.
No.
But it's giving you that next entree in.
It's like I planted you here, Denise.
I just nosed my way right in.
You nosed your way right in. Any questions from folks? I'm going to now walk through, using the impact report, sort of a sample elevator speech that we could develop, but I'm curious if anybody has any questions. So first of all, does this sound kind of in line with what you all have been using as your outline, or any questions that come up because of this outline that was shared?
Well, I just want to respond. There is a question about, are we recording? Yes, we definitely are, and it will be available. We'll make sure you all get a copy of the link so you can replay some of this, because I think, right, is this resonating? We kind of want to walk through each of the steps at our own local agency.
Yep.
I mean, for me, it does seem to resonate. I stumble over the words myself.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to use the word hub when we talk about community action partnership, because we're the hub is our new language. But it's hard to get to the ask. With each individual audience, I have to think about what is that little ask? What's that thing to move the ball down the field just a little bit more?
Yes.
So this layout seems to work for me.
Yes.
Curious to see if there's any chats that are coming in, if there's any feedback from folks on the call.
Someone loves the thought of giving someone an annual report, one of those copies as a point to follow up and keep that door open.
Nice.
And someone also just said you're doing great.
Oh. Thank you. Can you go back to that other screen, because I wanted to mention about tailoring a little bit. So looking at that outline, you know, one of the things that an elevator speech is supposed to do is be tailored to an audience that you're going before. So is it an audience of donors? Is it an audience of you know, state officials? Is it, you know, some of you may be coming to Lobby Day. Is it called Lobby Day?
Legislative conference or the Advocacy Day on the Hill.
Advocacy Day, okay. So, you know, so I mentioned the need to tailor to your audience, and I've also mentioned that one of the issues that we have is folks only mention that people are interested in, and therefore people don't hear a lot about an organization. So I just want to plant the seed in your mind here that when I think about tailoring, I think very specifically about my opening. What is going to grab this audience's attention with my opening? What is topical in their mind? What would make them like sit up and go, aha, or like, I also, to some extent, tailor the need. So when I'm before a group of individuals who, you know, are, their number one concern is about school readiness for young people, then I may start about the needs in around kids that aren't ready for kindergarten, right? Like what that looks like. Or if I know folks that are really concerned about affordable housing, then I might talk a little bit about how expensive, you know, how many hours a minimum wage worker might have to work in order to afford rent in my community. So I definitely start the tailoring part in that, those two, numbers 1 and 2. The solution is where I want to be really clear. You want to make sure that you're bridging to the broader set of work that you all do, right? So the solution could be, and that's why we actually have a proud, you know, part of the Head Start community, and we ensure that we have kids that come in, but we don't stop there. We know we have to work with the whole family in order to keep that kid you know, going through life with the best opportunities. And so that's why we also work with the moms to do this and the parents to do this. And then when, you know, when we know that their house needs weatherization, we do this. So you have that entry point through the need, and then you don't stop there, you do this broader set of things. And that is a great way to try and get all of your teams to really focus on talking about the organization in a, you know, in a way that is very, consistent, so that's the solution, is where you're consistent and really share that organizational response. So hopefully that helps with folks when they think about tailoring versus how do I get a consistent message out there, okay?
We do have a chat from Ernest talking about some good actions besides send you an annual report,
yep,
or come and visit our program.
Yep. So read it out to me. I can't, I'm a...
It says, what are some good actions besides...
Oh, I see. It's a question. Okay. I mean, you know, obviously it depends on the audience, right? It depends on the audience. So, are you asking them to, so do you want to be invited in to be a speaker with the group, right? Again, all the local clubs, if you know someone who's on a board of a club, do you want to get invited in to do that? Do you want to ask the city council staff or the city council committee staff to come and tour your programs, or one of the state legislators to come and tour your programs? And who do we follow up in order to do that? And I see that we have jokes being shared, so we'll do that as the interim before we go to the next one. What are some other things that you do in terms of your ask to open the door?
I want to share the joke. What do you call a cow with no legs? Ground beef. That's a good joke.
Yeah, that is, thank you. Thank you for stepping up, everybody. Who was that from?
From Joyce?
No, that's from Michael.
Michael Adams. Thank you for that.
Where's Michael Adams? I'm going to go visit him. Where is he? I love it. So anyway, those are some ideas. If other folks have ideas for your, can they see each other's chats?
And so a way to help with the chats is when you're typing them in the chat window, if you can please be sure to select all attendees. That way everyone can see it instead of just to host or panelists.
Nice.
That'll help to encourage the conversation.
Yeah, so if you folks have other asks that you do when you're sort of just introducing yourself to someone, I would love for some of you to type that into the all participant chat window so that you can share your ideas with one another.
And I have one of those actually from one of our attendees. So they talked about, especially in that lead-in piece, but they really have some phrases that they use that they've seen that get some people's attention.
Great.
Referring to community action or their agency as poverty expert.
Okay.
They focus on community engagement, so there's many of different connection points depending on who they're talking to. They talk about themselves in terms of size, so they're the 4th largest nonprofit in their region of Missouri, and they refer to their programs as poverty solutions rather than just programs or services.
Yeah, I love solutions. I love solutions, and another language point that we've been talking a lot about is connecting people to opportunity. So I think solutions and opportunity, they're positive. It's something that really, I think a lot of folks can get around, and we show in a lot of the science around words that work is these kind of positive, so negative things get people's attention, so this is a really interesting thing, like really negative things do get people's attention, but it leaves them without hope that there are ways to fix it. So positive things actually get folks to be encouraged that they want to be active and fix things. So that's just something to know.
We have one on the screen also that talks about them doing so many different things in their program. How do they unify that elevator speech?
Yes, that is a great, and that's something that Denise and I worked on together here, right? And we're going to take a little bit of look at that later, but one of the things that we talked about for the network writ large is that we talk about the network writ large, which has a lot of programs. It actually does three things, right? The network connects, so individual members of the network connect people and families to opportunities, and then that's a way to say through the following sort of solutions, right? So we connect people to opportunities. We work in community to help engage members to improve and change, right, areas of community. And then we serve as a resource for our elected officials and other leaders who are interested in working with us to solve poverty. So a lot of times when we think about, like, what are the three things that you all do, I think about it in terms of those three buckets, right? Connecting people to opportunity, doing community change, and serving as a resource and an expert for other leaders, elected officials, or whomever, right? Those are the kind of three things that you all do. I know that that's not probably how a lot of you talk about your programming. You probably talk a lot about sort of populations you serve, or you might talk about kind of sort of different programs in terms of how they're funded, and so therefore you might have like 10 different programs that you talk about. But I think it's really important to at least have that shorthand consolidation of the kind of work that you do, so that then you can go into more detail when folks need more detail in any one of those three areas.
Yeah, and I appreciate Joyce, it was Joyce's question, I think, about the challenge. We want to standardize, but it's not always quite that simple, right?
It's not always that simple. Right. But I would just challenge you all to not talk about 12 things that you do, but to think about, we do 3 or 4 things. Okay? Okay, let's go to the next slide, and then we'll come back to that, because you're going to have a chance to practice that.
There's one more comment
one more
related to something that you said, and I just don't want it to get lost.
Yes.
So one of our attendees asked about options, but like something else to do besides giving an impact report or whatever. So someone suggested in the chat, depending on who you're talking to, rather than just offering for them to come to your agency to see what you do, why don't you maybe extend the opportunity to maybe refer some of your customers to one of their services? For example, if you're talking to someone from a bank, maybe you can try to find a way to offer a short workshop for people that you're connected with in some of your financial empowerment programs, and that just helps to make it seem like a level playing field where you can both help each other.
I think that's awesome, and I would say the other thing that reminds me that one of the things that I've heard some of your state agencies talk about is when they talk to the state elected officials, they say, hey, listen, the other thing I want your constituent engagement person to know, you can refer people to us, so that you're offering yourself as a resource to the state elected officials to say, when somebody calls you because they need utility assistance or they're looking for job training or what have you, we're a resource for you. And that's sort of along the lines of what you were saying, is that, like, we have things to offer you, for sure.
I think that we hear that oftentimes agencies will try to be extremely responsive when it's an elected official who's sending one of their constituents, and being proactive and offering, especially if there are so many new members of Congress, so many new folks in your state houses. That's the pitch right now, right? How can we help you? Because you're going to get all these constituent calls. They may not know that they're going to be on the end of those phone calls, and their staff are going to want somebody to call. And we can be that resource.
Or clients that can testify at hearings. I mean, I have done a lot of that in D.C., where the city council is looking for people to testify and sort of finding members of the community, families, to come and testify. Alrighty, so shall we move forward? Okay, great. Alrighty, So I'm going to give you an example of, how to start building a elevator speech, and I'm using the community impact report that you all have gotten copies of and that are available online. So I wanted to show you that one of the things that I love about the way the report was executed is that it really has the building blocks for all of the things that we were talking about for an elevator speech. So, I was thinking about if I was going to go before an audience to talk specifically who are interested in issues around young people. So I focused in on the section of the report that, do you have the, can I go?
I do have the report, yep.
So, the report has different sections in it on different, asset building or jobs or, children and families, et cetera, right? So I'm looking at the children and families section thinking, okay, I'm going to go before a group of folks who are really interested in issues around young people. What's the material that I can pull together to think about and how to sort of introduce myself to these folks? So I opened up the report to that section, and I noticed that in that section there's a story, of course I can't read it from there, so I'm going to read it from here. This is from Garrett County. I don't know if Garrett County, Maryland, which I've been to and is beautiful, great camping out there. They have a story here. It's a rural area. For those of you not familiar with Maryland, it's a rural area in Maryland, Western Maryland, which, by the way, is very much paid attention to by Maryland's governor right now because we have a Republican governor, and he is looking at the rural areas and the eastern shore of Maryland as his kind of voter base. So he pays a lot of attention to those two areas. So honestly, if I were going to go talk to the governor, Garrett County is a great example to use if I were going to sort of if I had my 2 minutes with the governor to introduce myself. I would probably pull from Garrett County or the Eastern Shore. So I pulled up the report, and I noticed there was a terrific story in here. And the first paragraph of the story actually would be my attention-grabbing opening, right? So I would say, that I was Katune, and I was from the Garrett County, Maryland Community Action Program, if that's what it's called. So I'm going to read you this first paragraph, but I'm sure you all have these stories as well, right? So, I know, Governor, that you've been thinking a lot about, actually, he has been thinking a lot about early education and about our schools. There's a lot of conversations around our schools in Maryland. And, knowing we were going to meet today, I was thinking about somebody who came into my office the other day, was a mom who said to me for the first time ever when she came home from work, her daughter asked her how her day was. And the reason that was so amazing is that for the previous few years, her daughter had developmental delays and was nonverbal. And this was one of the first times that she came home and her daughter asked her how her day was. See, I'm getting teary just thinking about it. So it makes you sit up and listen to things for the very first time ever. And you know why? Because for the first time ever, she was in a program, in our Head Start program, and with lots of other support, we were able to get her to start building the skills that she needed, and we're confident that she's going to be able to enter kindergarten kind of ready to learn. So that's my attention-grabbing opening, right? I would practice it and say it in a way that was short, but has an emotional punch. It's a story people love. We're primed to listen for stories. And I think that similarly, you all could be looking at your stories and thinking about very much tailored to the audience and the opportunity. I'm not telling the whole story. I'm just giving a taste of a story that makes them want to listen to what I'm going to say. So that's the first thing, my attention-grabbing opening. So then my second thing, right, if you remember, the second thing is what? Does anybody here remember? What's the second thing? Problem? The need. Off the screen. The need. Okay. The problem that you are solving. You remember the problem that you're solving. So how I would phrase this. So again, in the children and family section of the report, there's all sorts of national statistics that were pulled out. I'm sure you all have access to your own state or local statistics. And so again, I wouldn't, and the nice thing about a report, right, visually, you can put in a lot more information. When I'm talking, I'm not going to give you all of those statistics. So I'm going to say April's daughter, April's her name, April's daughter is one out of every 2 other kids in my community who in fact are living in poverty and are a danger of not being able to get to school ready to learn, right? And what we find is, and then I might draw out a picture of what the family situation is too, in terms of what the community need is for families who are living in poverty, right? So that's the problem. I'm setting the context. And April's not just this one person. Actually, she's just like all these other people in our community, and we know what our community is, the families in our community are struggling with, and what those kids are struggling with. So I'm setting up the problem. This is a problem. And guess what? What's the solution? What's the solution?
Community action.
That's right, community action is the solution. So that's number 3. So we get to number 3, and I circled here, this is this combination of reach and impact, right?
Yep.
So we know she's like that she's not alone, there are all these families, and guess what? We have Head Start programs for kids like April's kid that reach 2,000 kids every year in our community, and we don't stop there. Remember that bridge that I gave you before? And we don't stop there. We serve the whole family by doing the following things. And we don't just serve families. We think about the whole community and bringing people on board to help, tackle seemingly stubborn challenges around our community. And we also make sure that everything that we're learning, we share with other folks, so that this isn't just a solution that we're offering, but that everybody in our community and our state can offer the solution, right?
I think one of the critical things you just said was that you start here, and then you add this, and you add this. So even in an elevator speech kind of situation, you're still able to get, and I do think the rule is 3 in my head.
Yeah.
Are there 3 things I can talk about? I'm going to talk about we offer a Head Start, but we also then tie those families into the parents into job training programs, because 3, we really believe in a whole family approach to solving communities' problems.
Yep.
And you can do that quickly, but you have to practice. You got to have those terms on the tip of your tongue, and you kind of have to have everyone, that's going to be the message we want to send.
Yep.
And I know Garrett is a 2-gen whole family agency, and that's how they frame their work, so.
Right, and the important thing, remember, don't just stop with what you're doing for the children and families, because the point is, you want people to walk away from that meeting and understand that your agency does more than that, so that they're not just thinking, oh, you're a youth empowerment agency, and then they don't realize you're missing an opportunity. First of all, maybe they're interested in all these other things too, and you're missing an opportunity to give them a chance to ask about those other things. But you're also, again, sending these mixed signals out when different people are talking about what it is that you do. Okay, so I'm going to get to number 4, and then I'm going to take questions. So then the number 4 thing is the action. And in this report, actually, the action is really just like go online and learn more. That's the action in your report, right?
All right.
Am I wrong?
No, that's
wrong.
Yep, learn more. Yep.
Right, because in fact, people will be giving different kinds of asks as they're handing out the report, and they're talking to people about the report, and there's cover letters going with the report. But in terms of just the print material, oftentimes when it's not specific to a policy ask or a fundraising ask, the ask is, get in touch with us, learn more, that kind of thing. So in this case, I circled that as the action, but of course, you all, again, we've talked about a lot of these actions. So if you go to that next screen, I kind of summarized what we just talked about, right? So the sample speech that we just did was the opening, the grabber was, let me start with this story. I'm going to tell you a story. The need was April's daughter is one of many kids. And by the way, the families as well. We know this about the families, and this is throughout our community. The solution, I guess it's not the Maryland Community Action Program, it's the Garrett County. That's why in Garrett County and then the action here was like, let's stay in touch. How can I get you more information or help you learn more or what have you? Okay. I'm going to pause. Questions, comments. Is Garrett County on the phone? Do they want to tell me that I did it all wrong? I'd love to hear from Garrett County. If you're on there, invite me to come and camp out in your backyard, because it's such a pretty area. Does this make sense?
It seems to make sense, and I'm thinking, we have the NCAP conference coming up, so people will be practicing this with their visits to the Hill.
Great.
I think, what month are we in? We're in March.
There are holiday seasons coming up where there'll be family gatherings. Can I use this model to tell my mother-in-law what I do?
My mother, till the day she died, didn't understand what I did. I remember one time she's like, "Do you read the Washington Post?" I'm like, "Mom, I'm a communications director. Of course I read the Washington Post. I'm a director in Washington, D.C." She's like, "Oh, I was just wondering."
But these same sort of things can work in those kind of cocktail situations, right? They can work when you're at your own Kiwanis Club meeting or your Lions Club meeting or whatever it is.
Yep.
What do you do? Well, let me talk to you about what's going on in my town.
Yep. Yep.
Or our city. Did you know?
Yep.
Here's an example of April.
Yep.
These are the challenges she had. You probably know X, Y, Z, other families in the same situation. And we believe that, you know, families deserve a chance, and this is how we help them do this. We help all families, and this is how we help our community.
Yep.
And we'd love to come talk to the Kiwanis. We'd love to come talk to the Lions Club.
Yep.
Rotary. Rotary always needs speakers.
Or the AKA alumni.
Alpha Kappa Alpha.
Like, there's like constantly.
Constantly.
Are you an AKA? My friend's an AKA, and I'm like, wow, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
And they're always doing service learning projects. Like, hey, how about raising money for me? That's my question. I mean, we should follow up with you. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Nothing?
Not yet, but I'm going to let folks in the chat know if there aren't any questions, maybe on any feedback, if this seems like a real
Totally.
approach.
So I'm going to actually, my next step is to have you all start thinking about your elevator speech. And so let's move forward to that, because what I really want folks to do is, again, in the chat window, with all participants selected, right?
So they can't do that, but if they send it in to us.
We'll read it aloud. We'll read it, okay, do all panelists, and then we'll read it aloud. Oh, my sorors, do try to stay engaged, go AKA. Hashtag AKA. Thank you, dear. So I'm going to follow up with you to see if you can host something for us. No, I'm just kidding, Okay, so here is your turn, and I want you to think about an actual opportunity that you have coming up to speak, okay? Or that, you know, if you're not the one speaking, if you're trying to work on somebody else, like your board chair or a volunteer, a super volunteer that you have that you want to get out there and highlight, or a client, honestly, a customer, you guys call them.
I want to respond to the chat that just kind of came in that did reference the NCAP conference, and I think it is a unique opportunity. Conference is not in session in 2 weeks when folks are coming to town to DC. But in some ways, that's even a more effective opportunity to build relationships with staff. There will be fewer people walking the halls. There will still be other people. And there's still a great opportunity to talk to staff who are actually having to do the deep dive into policy issues. And who want to hear the stories and who are learning and want to demonstrate to their member what they know about their own local community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They're influential.
Yes, so all of you, so I want you all to be thinking about something that's coming up. For all of you that are going to the NCAP meeting, I want you to think about that meeting and staff that you're meeting with from your members of Congress. I want you to use that as an example. Some of you may have donor things that you're going to go to. Some of you may, again, have like sort of fundraisers that you're going to where you're going to have a chance to say something. So I want you to think about what is the opening, the attention-grabbing opening that you would use for that occasion, okay? So is it a story? Is it a surprising fact? Is it something that's topical in the news?
Well, you raised the government shutdown recently. I think that I have used that in tying it to, imagine we have people employed full-time with the federal government. They missed after the first paycheck was missed, there were lines to pick up food boxes.
Yes.
Very, very quickly. And if working folks who are working full-time in federal jobs have that challenge, imagine families who are working on more tenuous jobs or have more tenuous income, the challenges they face every day.
There was an amazing story on NPR, if you guys didn't hear it, which was about comparing two folks that had disasters in their community. So a person from Houston and a person from New Jersey. I don't know if you guys heard the story, but one was an upper middle class family in New Jersey, and one was a working family. I don't know what we call it anymore, it's sort of working class or, post office employee in Houston. Both got flooded out. Both tried to get government help to sort of rebuild, and it talked about how different their experiences were. And the woman in Houston, full-time employee of the U.S. Postal Service, and her family got to be homeless, and she couldn't get the resources, so they were homeless for a long time, going to work every single day. And I was thinking about that story, and how if I were in Houston doing this work, I would be lifting up, like, did you see this story on NPR about this family in Houston? Let me tell you a little bit about families that we see. Like, it would be a perfect opening, right? So there's that, there's a need, there's the solution, and then there's the action. Yes, that disaster story was fascinating. Yes, somebody did hear that story. Okay, so I want you all to use the chat window, and I want you to take a minute, and I want you to think about your opportunity, and I want you to just, again, it can just be a couple of words or phrases. I want you to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do a story or a fact, and here's the fact, or here's, an indication of what the story is. Here's the need I'm going to highlight. Here's the solution that I'm going to highlight, and here's the action. I'd love for you guys to start jotting that down, and then you can kind of build on it later.
Yeah, send them into the chat room or chat window, and we will read them out loud for you while we're having folks put them in. Let me try one out on you.
Okay. Who am I? Where are you? Where are we? Who am I?
I think our folks do talk a lot in faith-based organizations or churches.
Okay.
Or faith institutions,
All
right? They might be.
So I'm an Iranian churchgoer.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. One of two. Okay. Yeah.
And we are seeing an increased flux of seniors, just setting the stage, right? And I say, I work at Community Action. Yeah, we are working with a number of people who are retiring or retirement age right now. I saw a recent study that the average person who is retiring has less than $5,000 available for retirement. People are really relying on Social Security, which doesn't pay anything. So we're really trying to help families be preparing for retirement, to be thinking about it, and we're trying to make sure our services are built in a way to help our families who are coming in with these needs or have aging parents. Now, see, I did not do that very well. I did not get to each of those points. How would you improve upon my elevator speech? Put her on the spot.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I was listening. That notion of people retiring with less than $5,000 in assets. First of all, it made me want to check my bank account. So
Scares the crap out of me.
But I thought that was a really great opening.
So I got to do something with that.
Right.
And what does Community Action do in that space?
I think that sort of starting to talk about the need. So what is it that the need is a little bit more? And then I think the solution, what I wanted to hear was specifically what you were doing around with working with seniors in their asset building. And then I wanted to hear that bridge. And that's not all we do, right? That's what I wanted to hear, that bridge.
So I could have tied in perhaps VITA, or tax preparation assistance.
Absolutely.
Because seniors still have to oftentimes file taxes. And I know we work oftentimes with the AARP, so we could potentially talk about the partnerships that we are working with in those communities.
And then I would say, and seniors are just one of the populations that we work with, because we really think about the whole family and people throughout their lives. And that's why we work with children, we work with families, we work with job trainees, we work with seniors.
See, I got to write all that down and practice. I see we have one that came in here.
Michael Adams.
With this bitter cold weather, it sure feels good to have heat. Did you know that thousands of people right here in Iowa don't have access to heat? You're going to have to scroll up a little bit further there. Here in Iowa are in danger of losing their power. Interesting way to frame that. With this bitter cold weather, it sure feels good to have heat. Did you know that thousands of people right now here in Iowa are in danger of losing their power?
I mean, that makes me want to know more, right? I'm like, why? Why are they in danger of losing their power? I think that's a great opening. That's a fantastic opening. Absolutely. And then obviously there'd be more, but I love that.
Our recent count of the homeless in our county is more than 3,300. Our community action programs, housing programs, offer not just emergency housing, but programs that may be necessary to maintain a healthy and productive lifestyle.
Okay. So that's interesting, 3,300, okay, and it says, we'll be touring a home.
Scroll back up a little bit, it's the previous one.
Okay, great. So I don't know what county you're in, but, you know, more than 3,000 people homeless certainly is something that makes me pay a lot of attention. And I think that, you know, one of the things that I would, you know, I think maybe even thinking about what this previous person said about the cold, I don't know where you are, but if you're in a cold area, you're in Iowa, right? So, I mean, can you imagine being one of those people in this weather who's homeless? You know, I think to just add a little bit of that emotional punch to the number. Sometimes the hard part with numbers is that we can gloss over that those are actual people, but I love that. I love that. Can you imagine being one of those people? And then, you know, getting into your, you know, that's why one of the things that we do is we really focus on both emergency and long-term and housing, you know, and that's not all we do.
And that's not all that this person said. It says, last year, community action agencies installed over 1.6 million pounds of insulation in Iowa homes. We're helping our friends and neighbors be more comfortable in their homes. We'll be touring a home that was weatherized by your local community action agencies. We'd love to have you join in our next tour.
I love that. And one of the things that I would also, so when I think of insulation, I think of that pink insulation. I don't know if that's the kind you guys use, whatever that is, yes, like the fiberglass. What's that?
The fiberglass.
Yeah, the cartoon character.
Pink Panther.
Pink Panther, right? Didn't they use that for the ad? So I would, with the 1.6 million pounds of insulation, can you imagine all of those yards of pink coming through the neighborhood and then getting put into homes? Like the visual of that, I just love that. So that would make me want to go tour the house, right, if I had more of a visual sense of what that was. So that's just a suggestion of a way to, like, make it even more, you know, like, oh, wow, yes, like in that sea of pink. I'd love you to come in and see that sea of pink and see what that means in terms of having a house that can withstand the kind of cold we've been having.
So I have another one over here that was sent into the Q&A.
Okay.
So at this time in our community, 15% of families in our community have been impacted by business closures. Our agency has committed $100,000 to support the retraining of those impacted via middle skill training. We need 10 local employers to work with us to reconnect them to reemployment. Would you be interested in joining?
Okay, so the key facts, there were 15% of our families, right, have been impacted by business closures.
And they've dedicated $100,000 to support retraining efforts.
Okay. And then we want you to be a business that kind of joins this kind of network. Okay. So I love the specifics of that. I think that's fantastic. I think I would want something that would help me understand the 15%. Because again, I will just say, like, numbers are really tricky things. When you give people a number, you're asking them to do a couple things, right? So first of all, you're asking them to do mental math, right? And in the mental, and as a person, not to be like gender stereotyped, but mental math is not the strongest skill that I bring to the table. Unlike my daughter, who's a whiz at math. So 15%, I'm thinking in my mind, is that a lot or is that not a lot? I'm not sure. All of those numbers that people throw out, I think to myself, is that a lot or not a lot? And so I would love to think about how do you make that a kind of visual picture in my mind. So one example that I give a lot of times in my message trainings, if any of you came to one of those, is like in the gun control debate, there was this message around like how many gun shops were in California, and I can't remember how many thousands it was. And it was sort of like, I don't know if that's a lot or not a lot, but then one sort of mental picture that we gave was there are more gun shops in California than McDonald's franchises. And all of a sudden, people were like, well, I don't know what number that is, but I see McDonald's on every corner. So like the mental map, all of a sudden they got it, right? So with the 15%, I would love to have a mental image of what that means. So imagine like walking into your church and the first 10 rows of people all had just lost their jobs. Imagine walking into the school and looking at a classroom and realizing that, half of those kids' parents no longer have a job, right? So just like create that mental image for them of what that number means is just one thing. Sometimes numbers work well, but a lot of times you have to get people beyond the mental math that they're doing. Is that a lot? Is that a little? I'm not sure. And just help them visualize what that number was. So that would be for all of you that are thinking about numbers.
Imagery.
Paint a picture in their mind about what that number means.
We have more coming into the chat. This one says, can you imagine how it must feel to be the only person in the room, and then in parentheses it says every day, no matter where you go, that needs help and you are unable to speak. There are people just like this all around us, people who desperately feel their needs go unnoticed. That's why our community action agencies exist. We're here to reach out to anyone in need and then find the resources to help them. We do this by providing a variety of health, housing, and education services for low-income individuals to help them reach self-sufficiency. We're here to give others hope and a hand up. Here's my contact information. Please let me know when you would be a better time to sit down with you and discuss our agency services and how you can join us in helping our neighbors.
Yep. Great. So what I like about that is you definitely are talking about your whole agency. You're giving a lot of specific things for people to follow up on. I like the idea of helping people understand how complicated it is to get stuff that you need. The one thing I want to be really careful about, right, is we don't want to position our clients who already have there's a lot of negative stereotypes about people in poverty. And so I want to sort of, it's not that these folks, it's any harder for them to figure this out. It's actually just like incredibly hard to figure it out, right? And so one of the things you might think about is like, the last time I went to the DMV, I just the other day, and this is true, I had to get my car, which was in my father's name, registered in my name. Do you know how complicated that was? I had to wait in, first of all, I walked into the room and there were like 10 different lines and there were no signs. I had no idea which line I was supposed to stand in. I went in one line, I waited forever in that line, I got to that place, it was the wrong line, they like pointed me to a different line, I had to wait in line for that. So you know what? This stuff is complicated. Imagine if it wasn't just your car registration you had to work on, but you had to figure out, an affordable place for your kids to spend their days while you were looking for work. You had to figure out how to get, rental assistance because you've been priced out of your home. And you had to figure out, the plant closed, and you had to figure out where you needed to go for job training. Like, that is the DMV on steroids. That's why we're here, right? So think about a way to do that opening that doesn't sort of, that allows people to understand, like, this stuff is complicated. And it's complicated for all of us, let alone someone who has 10 DMVs to visit, not just one. I think that puts people on a level playing field, which may help them to see your clients as kind of people just like them who like literally are struggling with so many more of these complicated scenarios than you could even get through in one day. Does that make sense?
I think so, because people get the DMV.
Totally.
And no offense to the DMV folks out there, we know that they are struggling with limited resources and capacity.
Totally.
They would, I'm sure, like the experience to be different, and in many places they are improving it. But people get that visceral.
Yes. And did you know you can't get a car registration taken care of on a weekend in Maryland or at least in Montgomery County? I had to go during the week. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Anyway, that's my own story. Okay, let's go.
This one is a bit more for Denise. It says that the specific examples are great, but more specific is easier to do. So wondering, what about community action in general? What is CAP's elevator speech?
Nothing like pressure, right?
Pressure. So, and Kenny, you referenced some of the language, and we do hope to we've been in the mix to do some of these elevator speech toolkits and messaging, and we'll be putting out some of these messages. But I'll share with you, right? The Community Action Partnership is the hub for the nation's 1,000 local community action agencies. Community action agencies connect people to opportunities. They work to create community-level change, and they truly serve as a local resource and expert for families looking to achieve economic self-sufficiency. And our job is to help connect folks who want to develop solutions to poverty and solutions to community challenges. We can hook them up directly with experts in the field at local community action agencies who do know what works, who are the evidence-based practice, who move families into economic security every darn day. And depending on the audience, sometimes I don't just use the word darn, but it depends on the audience. You got to know your audience. So anyway.
I'm going to give you an A-, and the only reason I'm giving you the minus is you forgot about the need.
Oh, 40 million people, nearly 40 million people live in poverty.
Right? It's like,
and even 2 to 3 times that are really struggling in America, making less than 200% of the poverty line. I did forget my need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This one comes in from Florida, and it says,
I'm sorry, we're not taking questions from Florida because it's too warm. It's not fair to the rest of us that are suffering in wet. Anyway, go ahead, Florida.
All right.
I'll take this with bitterness. Go ahead, Florida.
It says, after Hurricane Michael roared through rural Franklin County, Joe and Julie, both disabled seniors, found themselves stranded in their home with a washed-out road and no way to pay to get the bridge repaired. There were no agencies in the area whose responsibility it is to perform such work on private property. There's more. Stepped up to coordinate a variety of resources from different local agencies to raise enough money so the bridge could be repaired. Serving as a catalyst and connecting resources is just one way STEP serves the community.
Yay, thank you for making the bridge. Thank you.
No pun intended.
May I share other ways we work with our neighbors in need?
Yes, you guys are getting it. I love it. All right.
That's a great one.
That's great. So, and I'm sorry for being mad at you about your name.
About Florida.
About Florida.
No hate.
So I wanted to say, I want us to move along, but you guys absolutely are getting this. I think this is fantastic. So, right, you're gonna do, put your outline together. You're gonna do an opening that grabs people's attention. You're gonna not forget about the need. You're gonna offer the solution, and you're gonna bridge to the wider number of solutions you offer. And then you're gonna give a very specific request to keep opening those doors and staying in touch. Okay. So I think you guys. Okay. So we did the try it out part. We can move on that one. So I wanted to sort of close out by just giving some tips about delivery. So we could do like hours on speaker delivery tips and training, because that's a whole, and some folks are comfortable talking, some people are not comfortable talking, but I do think there are a few things other than sort of how you present yourself as a person, right? I think there are a few things very specific around elevator speeches and messages that I wanted to talk about. So let's go to the next slide, and I can just give you guys a little taste of that. So I want you to keep a few things in mind as you are kind of writing down your elevator speeches, or I like to call it outlining, because it's a speech, not a script. If you guys are reading a script, it is going to sound canned. And that's the important thing about elevator speeches, is that they should be not canned, right? They are conversation starters with people that you're in front of, okay? So the number one thing I want to mention is, and you hear me, if you've ever been to any of my other trainings, is it's about the audience values. You have to connect with the people in front of you, right? So again, think about the hook, the opening, think about the need, okay? And what do these folks prioritize? So if you are, if this is about like the end of Dixie cups and I'm the solution, I make Dixie cups, I'm a Dixie cup plant, but these people don't care about Dixie cups. They only care about champagne glasses, then you are talking to the wrong people, or you are not connecting to their need. If I want to talk about the need being like, the world has run out of champagne glasses, but guess what's a good backup? Dixie cups. And I make Dixie cups. It's great, right? You have to, so I'm not like claiming that I do something I don't do. I'm connecting to that audience's values. So the number one rule for every communication that you ever do, whether it's print or in person or online, it's always about audience first. Think about the audience. Understand what they care about, understand what they're interested in, and connect to them, okay? So audience values are number one. That's why I said when you were thinking about writing your speech, think about a real place that you were going to give it and who those people were, and then write it, okay? The second thing I've talked about a number of times is about making sure you bridge to the whole picture. Your organizational elevator speech will serve you well if everyone who is out there connecting to an audience value bridges to all that you offer. The point of this is to ensure that everyone in your community starts to get to know of what your agency does, and that whole picture matters. So don't just focus on that one sliver story. It's so easy to say, you care about this, so I'm going to tell you about this aspect of our work. Make sure you're talking about the whole picture.
And that is a nice piece to tie back to community action in the broad scope.
That's the bridge back to.
Totally, and we've certainly been encouraging folks to, when I did a lot of audience interviews with folks to talk about community action, the thing that got them to sit up and listen was the fact that you could go to any county in America, well, 99% of them, and there would be people who are being served by a community action agency. They're like, whoa, wow, that's amazing. So I think that, if it's the right opportunity, you could say, you could certainly make the whole picture about like, and we're not alone. In our state and in the nation, 99% of the counties are served by a community action agency. So we're a powerful force. As simple as that. Lets them know that you're not a standalone agency, that you have all these other resources and expertise to draw upon. Is it expertise is the plural word?
Sure, it is today.
Say it is.
Expertise or?
That's my ESL right there, my second language. Okay. This third thing, MIGO, which is my eyes glaze over.
Oh.
All right, which is a way of saying don't use acronyms, don't use jargon. MIGO doesn't mean anything, right? But when I say my eyes glaze over, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, don't use jargon. Don't use a ton of facts and figures. Pick one that means something that matters, right? Talk in a way that paints mental pictures in people's heads. Really think about who you're talking to and make sure that you're connecting with them through imagery that you're sharing. Don't let people's eyes glaze over. The worst thing to do is to use acronyms. I think acronyms they're like poison. People, even if someone knows what an acronym is, it immediately stops them because there's no emotional connection there.
We say things like TANF and SNAP all the time, and
right.
people
don't know what TANF and SNAP are after all these years. Someone's asking, but what counties are we not in? I know. What's that one county in the United States?
I wish I knew. I honestly don't. Unfortunately, it's here and there, and it changes over time. And some of us have talked about even just moving to 100%, because even if you're not necessarily getting CSBG into that county, odds are a contiguous cap, even in those rural places where maybe historically there hasn't been a cap, someone is serving families in some way, shape, or form in those areas.
99% is pretty impressive to me.
It is, yes.
And then the final thing is this talk real.
Yeah.
Okay? This is what I mean. Don't be a script. Don't talk like I'm like, oh, I need to be an expert, so I'm going to talk like an expert, right? No. I'm an expert, and I talk like a person. right? We're all people. We want to be in front of people and to connect with them. So use real talk. Don't worry, especially when you're speaking. Don't use formal language. In today's day, in particular, we're such a casual culture. America is such a casual culture. You want to talk in an approachable way that seems real, that you're not using, save your $20 words for some other thing. Just use real talk. If you have 4-syllable words, I would strike them out and move them down. I mean, honestly, just talk like you're in a grocery store in a line and you're talking to the person in front of you. You really need to be kind of casual and have a conversation. This is a conversation. This is not a formal presentation. So, and one of the things about talking real is that, you can give the power over to your board and to your staff to tailor to the way that they speak, right? So, we all have different speech patterns, or we all have our different favorite words that we use, or different ways that we, tell stories. And the thing about an elevator speech is it's the persuasion coming from you. You have to be connected to what you're saying. So on the one hand, I would definitely say, here's the outline. We want to hit these points. And by the way, these 3 words really matter to us, so you have to use these 3 words. You can pick your words and circle them and say, this word matters. We do not talk about clients, we talk about customers, or whatever the thing is for you. I don't know what those things are for you individually. So you can tell your board or your staff, these 3 words matter to us. Here's the bulleted outline. You have to hit these points. But let them talk how they talk, and that will make it a much more engaging elevator speech, a much more engaging. They have to connect to what they're saying. If it feels like a scripted thing, it's just not going to win people over.
I just love that you said, find those 3 terms, right?
Yeah.
At the partnership, for instance, we're using the word hub, and we're popping it in everywhere we possibly can, because if I can use it in my writing, and I try it out a few times, I may not use the hub in the same sort of way that Charity might or Zandy might or whatever, but that's the term. We're going to talk about opportunity.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about community change. We're going to talk about community transformation. We're going to talk about human development. And then every person uses those terms, just a little bit differently. You got to be real. You got to be yourself.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I got to memorize my speech.
Yes.
And it's that fear of public speaking. People say they fear that ahead of death in some studies.
My husband does. My husband hates it. He hates talking. He hates it.
And I think that's really, and I know I've said the word practice at least 15 times in the last hour. I can't say enough about hear yourself say the words.
Yeah.
And forgive yourself if you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
I need to take my own advice sometimes, because you come out of that experience in the elevator, like, oh, I should have said this. I should have said this.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you're real, you've made a human connection.
Yep.
I can follow up with an email.
Yep.
We can grab a cup of coffee.
Yep.
We'll chat about everything else and community action.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. That's right. Yep. So any questions about this? The sort of other things that you all have done to help you with being able to deliver elevator speeches?
No?
All righty. So just to wrap up, I have some suggestions on how you can move forward. So I would just say a lot of you started to type in outlines and drafts of things. Don't let this too much daylight appear between when we get off this webinar and when you're writing up your elevator speech. Again, an outline, a draft. As Denise then said, practice, practice, practice. So that allows you to start feeling comfortable. Again, it's not a script, and then you can tailor my coworker or my neighbor or my friend or my mom or what have you, and then, actually give an elevator speech, and then see how it feels in the moment and how to adjust. You read someone's body language and you go more into detail or less into detail about certain things. And then once you feel comfortable that this is the right outline for the organization, I would really encourage you to start bringing other staff and board and volunteers on board and actually do elevator speech trainings, right? So this webinar is going to be available online. Or you can just take some of the slides that, you know, that have the kind of outline and the example, and just sort of get people to start doing it themselves. I find in trainings, like if we were in person, the best thing to do is to take that moment to make people practice off of one another. So you could do like a staff meeting or a staff retreat where you're having everybody like write out their elevators. You know, you give them the basic, here are the things that we want to hit, here are the way we talk about our programs or what have you, and then you let them do their elevator speech, and then they practice and ping off of each other, and then they present it to the whole team, right? And get your feedback, because it's that saying it aloud and practice that you guys can kind of coach each other along. And I think that would, if you could commit to doing those 4 things in the next month, then you will find that you will be, I think, in good shape moving forward. So, that's it for me.
The only other thing that we want to make sure that we just flag on today's webinar is one more chance. We are just a few weeks away from our Immigration Summit, which is being held in El Paso. Hope that people will come to that, and that you're saving the date in Chicago. We will have a communications track. Woohoo! And maybe we can even convince you to come to Chicago. I don't know, maybe.
I love Chicago.
We'll see.
It's not cold then.
It's not cold then in August, right? It'll be hot.
But it won't be like March 17th, they always dye the river green.
Oh, no, it won't be green.
It won't be green.
At least by dye. Right?
Not, yeah, maybe by pollution.
We love Chicago. The other thing I would say is that we will be posting a job opening here shortly for a senior associate on communications. Great. The board has invested. You saw the dues letters that gone out, and we are hiring someone to help. We have Johnny on staff right now who helps us who does a lot of work on social media and newsletters. But we're taking Kenny Yoon's advice and really investing, doubling down on communications to help agencies tell their story, to do a better job of producing these fun things, although I will say Zandy's pretty skilled on Canva off here to the side. So we're excited. So keep an eye out for that either this week or early next, and we'd welcome applications from within Community Action. So
you're poaching, is that what you're saying? You're poaching?
No, we're maximizing. As someone who came from New York's association, I understand the challenges of coaching. Anyway.
Great.
So I think those are the things that we have. This is our contact information, myself and Johnny. We'd love to have you reach out if you have any comments, questions, or concerns.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, we're going to pause the recording, and hopefully you'll be able to listen to pieces of this after we send you the link. So have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.